Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, November 21st. Wow, my notes say September 26th, so that's how long it's been. You're hanging out with my community manager. It's great to be back from a little bit of a work break. This is the community built by, built for, and really managed by community managers. As always, you can chat along with us over on Twitter at our hashtag CMGR Hangout. If you love what you're seeing today and you want to participate or hang out with us or give us some ideas, go to our website at www.mycmgr.com. Click on participate, fill out that form that comes to Sherry and I, and we'll get back to you. And really, please, it's your ideas, it's your guests, it's your friends that make this show happen every Friday and keep the community going. So, all right, what do we have for you this week? That's a good question. So setting expectations in your community is kind of a crucial part of fostering a healthy environment, but it requires a little bit of balance. So perhaps you're working with an open source community and you balance things like code reviews and contributions, or maybe you're concerned with what your C-suite is expecting. So today we're going to talk about things like how you take the expectations of your organization and match them up with your community's needs without really exhausting yourself in the process. And maybe talking about things like how you decide things like acceptable response times when you just feel a little bit out of balance. So shout out to Sarah over on Twitter who's helping us out with our chat over there. We have 5 questions today, guys, so we'll definitely have more time to fill. As always, please tweet them into us. It's great if you tweet one of us. We bring them into the chat, then we bring them up and talk about them. But if you want us to answer any questions, feel free. So with that, I'll just let everybody introduce themselves, starting with the awesome Sherry.
I don't know why I always go far away from this window around the time that I know you're getting to that part. Hey everyone, I'm Sherry. I lead our community and user experience teams at a company called Rebellion Media, as well as co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew. And lately have been getting things organized to start planning for Community Manager Appreciation Day. So look for more of that soon.
What day is Community Manager Appreciation Day, Sherry? We should probably start plugging that.
January 26th, 2015.
January 26th, and we've got actually lots of other community manager groups. This is sort of like our biggest year yet of really combining all forces all together to make an awesome event, right?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. There's already a lot of updated logos of who's involved on the site as well as on the team page. So.
And that site is?
cmad.co, cmad.co.
So check it out, guys. All right. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
I am awesome. Thank you very much. Patrick Helen. I'm community manager for a company called CloudLock. We are a cloud security firm. Happy to be back here in the depths of November with the sketchy mustache that I'm currently rocking. I know that it's at a good point when mothers and fathers will shoo their children closer to them when I'm on public transportation, and I'm looking forward to to running through some questions there.
That's awesome. Happy Movember. Jordan, how are you?
Hey friends. You weren't here last week. It's good to see you again. Hey everybody tuning in. I am the community manager over at understood.org, where we're connecting parents with one another as they navigate the journey with their kids who have learning and attention issues. So glad to be here today. And also, as someone who rocks the facial hair thing year-round, I think that nothing below, just a little above is a good look for you, Patrick. Way to go.
Awesome.
You lie like a rug, sir.
And Dom, how are you? Thanks for holding down the fort.
Yeah, super stoked to be here. Dom Garrett. I am the co-founder and chief social officer of Gathering. It's an event-based social media app. I'm actually coming to you from the Mutually Human offices in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we are they're the wonderful development team going through a great week of planning here, even though we got like 2.5 feet worth of snow in the past like week. So that's fun. But yeah, I do that. I also am a podcaster with the Train Monkey Show with Emma Cunningham and Maya Paveza, who I'm sure are holding it down on Twitter right now. And every week I forget to say about the Monkey Show, and Emma blows me up, so I have to make sure that I put it out there. But I'm really glad to just sort of be able to sit back and answer some questions and let Brew run it and not worry about, messing up like I seem to do every time.
Oh, you do a great job. I always watch the replays, and I'm proud of you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so, all right, let's just jump in to the first question here. And that question is, how do you decide what expectations should be realistic for your community? That's interesting. Who has something to say about that?
I can start on that one. So I think it's a really interesting question in that there seems to be, I think there's probably two answers. There's the answer that I think people watching think exists, which is here's when, here's how you decide, here's the process, here's the specific answer, etc. But I think the truth of it is it's more along the lines of you can't decide, the community kind of has to decide for you. Because there's going to be moments where you think you have a completely perfectly crafted response to something, and you put it out there, and the community at large is like, what's wrong with you? What's that about? But then there's times that you think you're going to put out something that is terrible, and they eat up. So I think the process for me, at least, the process that's been ongoing, is that it's a give and take to decide. You have a basic level set expectation of what you're going to put out there and what the response is going to be, and then you adjust accordingly as the community begins to either get their pitchforks or they begin to like and thumbs up your update. Synergy.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think you're right, Patrick. A struggle that I've seen in the past is that you bring to the community a set of expectations that aren't necessarily that don't consult the members of the community. So you build a product that that you've not received any weigh-in from the people who will be using it. So I think that plays right into what you were saying. Like, you have to wait for your community a little bit to tell you what expectations are realistic for that community. However, I think that if you're coming with a strong organizational mission, and you have a brand that already defines itself without the existence of the community, then you can bring some of those things into the community. For instance, when I was working with TED Ed, TED had a really strong brand before we started the TED Ed community. So we knew some expectations to bring to the community table before we launched it. For instance, we wanted it to be a place where ideas could be spread without much interference. That's kind of a high-level expectation, I suppose, but tactically we said we want a forum that works really, really well. So conversation back and forth needs to be much more important than the ability to connect with social media. So I think that's just a roundabout answer of saying that, yes, I agree with you, like, listen to the community members, tell you what expectations need to be met, but also try to convert the brand's mission and kind of the most important things for the organization into the platform, so that you're not just waiting for the community while that's important, but you're also asserting what the brand is in the community. Does that make sense? I think it does.
Yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense, because really there's like what you can realistically, humanly accomplish, right? There's like what the community actually needs, and then there's what like your organization expects of you. So like there's so much, I feel like, to factor in.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it really does depend on the age and I'm going to say the just brand recognition when you're talking about setting those expectations. You know, Jordan, you're talking about TED Ed, and like what you said, that almost you have what people are already expecting from TED Ed. So then if you give them a community, a specific place to go, they sort of know where they're fitting in there. You know, with Gathering, we're creating a brand new community. It's a brand new app. There's not a lot of things that do this. So instead of us we could just set up guidelines for it and have little or no community input. But what we're trying to do is we're actually running, if you've ever read The Lean Startup, it's experiments to try to get us an idea of what we actually are going to be. You know, we obviously had the idea, so we're sort of the architects of it. So we have a rough estimate, some very broad strokes, but to get very fine with it, to do that in a truly responsible way when you're talking about your resources, really digging into the community and sort of having those interviews and those experiments with certain people that you want to be part of said community is really going to help you build up what the expectations are.
Can you elaborate on exactly what those experiments are? So if someone else was trying to start a community from scratch, what would you say the two most important experiments would be?
The first off, I think the most important is if you create in your head with your partners, create 5 people that you would want to be a part of your community. And I'm not talking about, you know, Dominic 27 from Michigan, but get very, very detailed. Dominic 27 works in this sector, lives at this address, is from here, is a transplant to that city. Get as specific as you can, and then find that person in real life. So set up those things, and then when you are considering, you know, you're making 5 different people, find those specific people and ask them about certain aspects. You know, you have to do a lot of the work yourself to sort of build that, but then you can really get just specific details from them on that. And then, you know, a lot of these communities we are talking about are online. Try to find an actual brick and mortar, real flesh community out there that is similar to what you want to do with your online one, and observe. You know, that's the other experiment, just actually going and, you know, there's not necessarily data that's from there. If you contact somebody that actually runs that community, they might be able to give you some demographics, but actually get into the nitty-gritty yourself, become a part of that community, see the way that it actually works and what expectations are there, and ask those people what they like or they don't like. You know, one of the greatest things is if, you know, these experiments are crowdsourcing so that you are saving that that mistake, which could end up costing you a lot of time and energy that could ultimately make it so your community doesn't have any stickiness. So those are the really important things, I think, when it comes to experimenting as to how to get those guidelines.
That's interesting. So Patrick, when you guys started your community, did you guys do those experiments too? And did you just explicitly ask the people that you had envisioned, what expectations do you have for this community we're building for you?
We actually did. We didn't do any building. We didn't build like an ideal member profile, let's say, because we sort of had an understanding as to who our ideal member would be, because we were working with my community is customer focused, so it's strictly my company customers. So we knew who the people were. We knew who they were as far as like internal personas were concerned. Like you know, this is an influencer, or this is someone that's actually using our product, etc. And so those conversations became less of a planning stage, but we asked them flat out. We said, you know, like, here's some of the more vocal of our customers, or here's some of the more vocal people that are out there that we know use our product. Let's specifically ask them what would be a returning value add for them. What's going to make them engage with the community? What do they want to see? What do they need to see? What do they not have today that we can provide in this format? And then we worked on providing that with a great deal of feedback along the way. I think to everybody's point, the balance is the real tricky thing. To say, like, we have incredibly specific company goals, be they revenue focused, be they release focused, etc. And if we were to completely give control over to what the average community member would want, it would be roadmap, and bug fixes, right? That's what everybody wants. I think as a consumer myself, I would love to get more information on some of the products that I buy from the company itself. So I understand that drive, but the balance of what it is that we're working on and what we can tell you about from a competitive standpoint, from a non-competitive standpoint, etc., all bears witness to that, and all comes back to setting up your community to succeed by just asking people what they want.
So, one of moving on to our second question here, can promising too much be detrimental to kind of your community relationships? Would you guys think that you can't promise too much, or can you?
I'm going to say yes. There's the adage, under promise and over deliver. I think that really does have a lot there. And I mean, if you just want to look at it, I try to look at the communities and the people that I'm discussing like there is not a difference between the way that I act in my just life with humans every day face to face as I do online. Patrick's making that face. What are these things? Humans in real life? But I have a tendency as just a person to be a people pleaser. And it has gotten me into a lot of issues. Sherry and I were actually talking about this on GChat this week. I overpromise a lot, and it's gotten me into some really bad situations because I don't want to let people down. And people understand that, but if all you're doing is overpromising, you really run the risk of falling short. And when you do, and you break that trust, it is a hell of a climb to get back up there. So if you only are promising things you know for a fact that you can deliver to your community, anything else over that is frosting. It's fantastic. But you have to be very careful with how you're promising people things, because you could fall flat on your face.
So how do you think that would relate to maybe like a roadmap, right? What if intentions are good, like you have, hey, these are all the things we want to get accomplished within this community or our product, service, whatever. Should you not share that stuff until it's like concrete, or?
So roadmaps are kind of tricky. I've been on that with community, and the problem is like you can promise someone that this feature is coming up, but something more critical could happen that's costing someone sales or something, and then you have to bump that. And so it just kind of sucks. So for us, like we could tell them, like, hey, like this is a high priority feature for us. We have multiple people requesting it. But a lot of times you can never promise a release date on a feature unless like you already have it scheduled and you know it'll be there. Because once you break that, like they will never let you forget it. And like when Dom and I were talking about this the other day, like really it's an integrity issue when it comes down to it. Like if you're making promises and you're not following through on them, that's integrity, and you're breaking that, and that is super hard to regain.
And the important thing. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, sorry. I would say the only thing I would throw into the mix here is that I agree completely with everything you're saying. Like the integrity piece and the fact that the second you put any sort of information into a community or any sort of promise out there, it's pretty much a graven image, right? Customers will run with that forever because they expect it, right? You said it. You said it through a proper channel. The second you say it through a proper channel, it's the truth, no matter whether or not it actually is or not. But one thing that I do, and I've found a decent amount of support for it, is that because you can have communities where the community manager ends up focusing a lot of his time or her time on being the voice for the customer internally, then it becomes a benefit to be like, listen, we're still doing our very, very specific, balanced roadmap conversation to say, this is a feature and functionality we need, or this is a feature and functionality that we've promised. How do we put that out there? But if no one is championing that customer viewpoint, in some cases having a little bit of that promise moment can add some skin in the game for the engineers and the other people that are associated, because then it's like, listen, whether or not it was correct at the time that we said something, our integrity is that we say what we mean and we keep our promises, but customers are really, really, really pushing for this. So if I said in the community, I'm going to make my best effort to make sure that this gets included in the next release or whatever, if I can then still explain myself when I come back, a lot of times that actually ends up building that same level of credibility, because it's like I'm your avatar, right? I'm going back to the big meetings and taking some lumps to make sure that you guys get what you want.
Yeah, I would say that I tend to communicate to my development team and the management team a lot like that, Patrick, where I want to bring the concerns and the desires of the constituency back to the table. I think in the nonprofit world, it's always a little difficult because you can't say that this functionality will bring this amount of dollars all the time. Sometimes you can, but in a couple of instances where I've worked, the community has not been set up to sell a product or to offer a service. It's really been more about a conversation surrounding an idea. So it's just a place where people can come and talk about education at large or about learning and attention issues. Those are two examples. But what I will say is that if we can show that functionality or new features can better engage the community so that we get the type of feedback that we're looking for in the community, going back to those expectations. If listening to the voice and then implementing their suggestions into the community will help us reach the expectations that we set as we built the community, then that's a huge leverage point. We're doing this because it's going to help us meet our expectations, kind of thing. I also wanted to speak a bit about the transparency point of view. I like to, and this is almost impossible in the online world, build a roadmap that's about 12 months out, because once you get past 3 or 4 months, it's wishful thinking, right? But it also inspires innovation and ideas, and it really gets people thinking. And if you can show a big picture, then people say, oh yeah, I can really get behind this idea, and they kind of buy into the community for more than just the moment. They're like, I know what's coming down the road, or what we hope to come down the road. And if you share that big picture, that roadmap that may or may not come to fruition, I think it's just about communicating around that idea, like saying, no one really knows what the internet is going to look like in a year, but here's what we would really love to happen. Wouldn't it be cool if you could help us make this come to fruition? But if it doesn't, just stay committed and help us figure out what we can do a year from now. Just giving the people involved in your community a sense of ownership.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the internet in a year will probably have some more cat videos. So there's that. Dom, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to talk about cat videos, but if I have to say something else, I agree completely with what Jordan is saying, and I think that really comes down to what you're talking about with that integrity and why the brands that are doing it right and the companies that are doing it right have such buy-in is because when somebody acts like an actual person, like a human, and they say, hey, this is what we would love to do, and then just like what you said, Jordan, just go, hell if we know this is actually going to happen. Like, I'm sitting and I'm doing a startup right now, and there are people that are like, oh, do you have a 3-year business plan? I'm like, hell no, I don't know what the world's going to be like in 3 years. It's like, but I can give you the idea of where I would like for it to be, and if you could just be that real and buzzword drinking game authentic, then you can really get people to buy into that, because they know that they're coming into something that might not be concrete, that they realize they have an opportunity to help shift and form themselves. That adds, the stickiness there, that gets buy-in, and it really allows for you to sort of have these expectations that people want to see happen, and they want to help you achieve them. And it's less about them knocking you down if it's not right on course, because you're filling them in and keeping a very open line of communication throughout the entire process.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think it really depends on the type of community as to like how much of that roadmap you can reveal. But there's so many ways to really like collect that feedback and let people know that you want their input even without doing that. Like we're constantly asking people and have many ways for people to share with us like what they'd like to see on the community. I mean, we're always incorporating that, whether it's topics or features or whatever. But I think even beyond that, examples of like almost like ambassador or influencer programs with communities where they have a core group that does know about features ahead of time and does know more about the roadmap because they know that they can speak for the community as a subset of the community and share their input without blasting to the world, oh, hey, X, Y, and Z are going to happen on this date, et cetera, et cetera. So you're still definitely like communicating them, but maybe in like a more of a closed way in a little bit.
Well, let's move on to question number 3, and for everybody watching and also chatting over on Twitter, remember you can tweet your questions in, hashtag CMGR Hangout, and we'll try to bring them in and answer them with our geniuses below. So number 3 is, how do you communicate? And man, my little Gmail pop-up window just came alerting me of a meeting, which then I lost my question here. So what the hell is the question? Here we go. So how do you communicate these expectations to your community?
By communicating them and turning all of it into cat videos.
I would say if you had a cat video explaining your roadmap, like a cat talking, and like just cute kittens like being like, oh my god, in Q2 we're gonna release this. Like that actually might be the best way to ever release information about products or communities or whatever, because maybe 12% of the people watching would actually get anything out of it, and the rest of them would be like, oh, the little one is so cute. Complete plausible deniability. Then be like, we didn't say that. Some cat video said that. That had nothing to do with our roadmap. What's wrong with you people?
Communicating. It's all the wave.
Hilarious. I actually think that we answered a little bit of that question in the last question and answer. Being transparent, kind of allowing people some ownership, whether it's the entire community or, as Sherry suggested, a subset of the community. Member advisory boards are really cool if you can identify a group of people that are the super users of your community, not necessarily moderators or staff members, but just real users, and running by a draft communication with them and saying, do you have any feedback? How do you think the community will respond? And then really implementing their suggestions into the live communication. I think that goes a long way. But I will say that anytime I've had to communicate a message to the community at large, I've always tried to communicate it internally and bring everyone to the same page first, so that when stakeholders or staff members or other people that access the community that are related to the organization kind of know what's going on, and they don't hear about it from the community for the very first time. It's not really answering the question in addition to the question.
One thing we haven't really talked about with community expectations is something as simple as response time. And I think like that is pretty easy to communicate on any sort of forum where people can contact you or whatnot. Like just let them know right then like when they should expect to hear from you, whether it's within a couple hours or within a couple days. Like set that expectation right away so they're not like, hello, did you get my message?
Sorry guys, I froze up for a minute there. I'm going to move us on to question 4, which is, how do you communicate expectations into the C-suite?
This is kind of my favorite question on this list because this is something it goes both ways for me in that there's a need to communicate to the C-suite what's going on in the community, what their expectations are. I think this covers all bases. This is whether it's an internal community and you're working with your own employees and they expect to have the day after Thanksgiving off, or whether it's a customer-based community and you're trying to explain to them that, hey, that last patch didn't work and we expect an update. All that sort of stuff. Pushing that upwards is sometimes daunting, depending on how your organization is set up, in that sometimes you don't want to be too squeaky of a wheel. But one of the benefits that I've always seen is that it's significantly better to be just completely blunt, let's say, about what the customers are saying, because the C-level has no problem with addressing issues. They actually, in a lot of cases, really enjoy addressing issues and dealing with like a community's expectation that your SLA should be an hour as opposed to 6 hours. But the one thing they hate more than anything in the world is to be ambushed by something that they didn't know ahead of time. So I say I over communicate all that stuff. Sometimes they don't care. Sometimes they might be like, today's not the day. We have a huge release going out, etc. We appreciate the update, but it's not dire. But not communicating that leads to obviously scary moments later on.
Do you try to communicate it into the C-suite a little more summarized, almost like executive summary style versus kind of, I guess my question would be is, do you shorten up that information at all?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a snapshot, right? It's if we have 600 people that are talking about something, that's probably of interest. If we have 2 people that are talking about something, might be a complete outlier, might not be that big of a deal. If those 2 people become 600 people by the time I speak to them the next time, then that's once again a big deal. Yeah, it's a total 20,000 foot view. Here's what's going on. Here's the people that are communicating, and here's what they're communicating about. 5 minutes, stem to stern, and then get out of the way.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. The one thing that I do want to throw in there, and with this, is the importance of knowing the language that your C-suite speaks, and that there will be probably some different types that are in there. When Patrick, when you were talking earlier, in the chat, I put in that thing where, you have your company and then an arrow going back and forth, and then you, and then an arrow going back and forth to community. And you are essentially like a translator there, taking it from a language to another. I think about sign language interpreting, for instance. ASL and English are 2 totally different languages. But yet you have an interpreter in the middle that's taking it from one and putting like almost thought for thought into it so that I can understand it from what they're speaking, and then doing it back and forth. As a community manager, that's exactly what your job is. You're supposed to take all of this information and boil it down and then speak it in the context that the C-suite knows. Whether that is more story-based or more factual, depending on that, you are the one that's responsible for doing that homework to get to know both sides very intimately well, so that you can easily switch between languages. So you can talk to Sally from your community, and then you can talk to Mr. Jones, whose signature is on your paycheck.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, Dom. I think a lot of a really difficult part of being a community manager, I find, is, and difficult might not be the best word, one of the pleasant challenges of being a community manager is that you oftentimes have to advocate internally with stakeholders and upper management, the C-suite, for things that in your heart of hearts to be true and best for your community. So you're right, that language of, I tend to always speak the language of the community, and it's hard for me to switch into that language to speak with upper management or the C-suite. But I think if we can really master the art of advocating internally, especially with the largest stakeholders, those business-minded people, then we could do a great service for the community at large. I think one way to do that is just, if at all possible, to set a regular meeting internally with your your management team, if possible your C-suite, so that you can invest them in the community. I mean, from my perspective, what C-suite wouldn't want to be invested regularly in their company's community? So I think it'd be a much easier sell communicating these expectations to the C-suite if they were already invested. Perhaps at that point they're bringing expectations to you, saying, did you see this comment in the communities? Can't we do this? I mean, that's an ideal world, but
yeah, and it's, when you're talking about speaking that language, I mean, it reminds me of something that Emma Cunningham talked about one week, and like having a theater background. And Brew, you talked about it. You know, when you are, say, a brand that's speaking, you know, say Applebee's or Cinnabon, you know, you are embodying a specific person, and you're speaking like that. Keep that when you're coming back to the C-suite. Like, really dive into that character, get in the head of your community. So it's essentially like you are the one that is speaking, but the voice inside of your head is your community. I don't know, that sounds really weird and exorcisty, but it's, you know, it's definitely something that if you share that you're speaking like that, and you're able to actually maybe even tell your community, hey, this is what I said to this, and then they can sort of see that you are their champion, then they're going to trust you more, and you know, it's really going to help.
I'm going to jump us into just a couple questions from over on Twitter. We'll start with Michael. Michael, thanks for joining us. Michael asked a question for the panel. How do you manage your own expectations? Who'd like to take that one?
Me. I read an awesome article the other day, which I cannot remember what the hell it was, but it was good, I promise. That was pretty much like, I'm a to-do list guy, and so I have all these expectations about what I'm going to get done, who I'm going to communicate with, what my roadmap for the week might look like, yada, 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 right? And I was getting more and more frustrated as the to-do list grows and I check off, 15 things a week. So to better manage my expectations, I'm doing a better job of managing my calendar. And it's that simple. I've got from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. that I'm allowing myself to do work. Those of you who are also community managers know that's completely optimistic, but hey, we're going to say 8 to 6. And I schedule everything. I schedule everything now. Like if I've got roadmap calls, or if I've got C-level stuff that I have to do, or if I'm talking about just the simple, like most basic admin stuff in the world where I have to add people into a community or like remove things from a community, it's a 15-minute or a half an hour block within my calendar. And that way, I'm managing the fact that if I'm optimistic and I think that I'm going to get 65 things done on my to-do list this week, there's just no way it's not going to happen. But if I block out specific chunks of time, I'm still flexible enough that I can move those things and I can shift them as needed, but I can look at my calendar and in 12 seconds see exactly what I can get done, what I should expect to put on my setup for next week, and what I should be planning on recruiting some additional help for, because I don't have enough bandwidth to do it myself.
Awesome. I'm going to bring another one in here. This comes from Alexander. Hey, thanks for joining us this Friday. He asks, what social channels should we keep an eye on for the next year? So other than Yik Yak, who's got one?
Honestly, it's hard for community-wise, maybe through the storytelling, but I am so high on Snapchat right now. The move that they just made with Snap Cash, I am so happy. They are going to build a culture of mobile payments with 12 to 14-year-olds that is going to stay with those kids for forever. This is going to be their debit card. So I mark that down November 21st that I said that, because it's going to be fantastic.
Anybody else got a hot social network that they're thinking about for next year?
I would also say probably the Gathering app. I think that would be something that you should probably take a look at. I hear it's releasing sometime in February, and it's going to be great and really just break through all of the app pollution that you have on your phones. So.
By the way, now you've set our expectations, so it better be available in February.
Yeah, it'll be available in February. I'm actually here, so I can go put some actual skin in the game.
Have you guys heard of this Twitter? I hear Twitter's going to be big next year.
Yeah. I think that Twitter will continue. I think Twitter will continue to be a really great platform for companies, especially because right now it's one of the stronger networks that you don't have to pay to play in necessarily, and it just seems like the Facebook is going more and more down that road, which is the Facebook.
Except for if you look at what Facebook just did with their organic, with the organic ads that you have out there. They just switched up the rules on that, changed their algorithm. Facebook is really trying hard to make themselves a platform that, I don't know, people actually want to be on for more than 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah, they kind of lost me.
Hey, I don't know if I can do this or if it's not kosher, but I would like to throw awesome. Yes. I would like to throw that question back out to everybody else because I hear of things that just come across my desk and then I don't necessarily have the time to delve deeply into any of them. Some of them kind of rise above, like I was early on the bandwagon for LO and
yeah.
But I'd like to throw that back out to the community, like everybody that's listening.
So let's do this. Everybody who's watching, start throwing out some tools. Make sure you include the hashtag CMGR Hangout, but also include the hashtag next year's tools. And that way we can follow that hashtag and kind of have a little collection. Hashtag next year's tools. So S is on both there.
Whoever calls the most successful one for next year will get a personal thumbs up from me.
Right on. All right, so let me grab one more question here. This one comes from Cheval. Thanks for joining us, Cheval. He says, what's the best practice on building a community? So if you had to answer that just sort of like in a short form on an elevator, go.
I can go. Build internal consensus first. The push that I've made is that building a community and then hoping it works, or hoping that you get support from the other people that are using it, or hoping that other people can find time for it in their overall schedule is next to impossible. But if you walk into the process, if you're about to build one and you say, okay, before we look at vendors, before we discuss parameters, before we say this is what we want, you say, nope, here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, first and foremost, who does this affect? Who are the stakeholders outside of the community manager? Who else needs to be involved in the decision-making processes? And then let's build, whatever you want to call it, RFP, request for quote, whatever it is that can be as formal as informal as possible, but get that consensus built. So that way, if someone does not have community content creation built into their goals, you can probably guess that when it comes to push to shove, they're gonna go to something else. They're gonna go to something that's gonna either make them money or get them better standing in the company itself, or to help other people that they think need help, than to help with something that they're sort of tangentially connected to.
I'll add after you do that, I would say before you launch live, as far as I would urge anyone, if you're at all possible, give yourself about 8 weeks before you make things live. Have yourself a little beta community so that you can test it out, and if what you've come to a consensus on internally doesn't work, then make some changes before you go live. Because even if you're at an internal consensus and you've even consulted some, you've done your experiments and you've consulted your community, it just might look a lot differently published on paper. So test it out before you make it go live.
That's a good advice. I am going to bring in one last question here before we move on to our last kind of topic. James, oh look, James, I don't follow you. I do now. There we go. So James asks, anyone have a good roadmap on how to develop a social media center of excellence for a company? Has anybody done that yet, or have some thoughts on that?
Can we get a definition of what a social media center of excellence really means?
All right, so I'm just gonna wing it here, and I kind of look at so if I think about, if somebody just asked me, could you please develop a social media center of excellence for a company XYZ, I'd look at it as like a place where you can go to learn best practices, how to be awesome, basically, in social media, for all levels of people within the organization. To whether that's extending themselves into the communities we build, or playing their role in social media.
I would say, I mean, the first place you would want to look is it's sort of a reverse networking, I would imagine. Look and see what you can tell has made some really, really good impacts. See who you have out there that actually are rock stars, and sort of back up from there. Ask those people, hey, what did you do? What exactly, what was your thought process behind that? I think that that's a great way to do it. I mean, it's the same way that you would sort of do it as if you were doing it for the community, not necessarily for people inside, but the outside. I'm a huge proponent that you need to talk and treat your community the way that you talk and treat your coworkers and the people inside of your organization. You're just the little linchpin in the middle, and they're both basically the same. So influencers in your community, see what they're doing, ask them questions, and then sort of fill in the guidelines throughout there.
Yeah, the more you can really cultivate that internal community, the more success you'll have being able to build what you want with your external community, for sure.
And then I think tactically it's figuring out a way to store all the information, and it's probably a little bit sexier than just storing things as files. So whether that's like a wiki where everyone can kind of add in and contribute, maybe it's tools like Google Hangouts, recording them live, where maybe one of your sales guys has these great LinkedIn techniques, and so he shares with the company, but it's also recorded for people to refer to later, and then possibly somebody kind of types out and makes a summary of that video. I think content, simple content, ways for people to learn when they want to learn, and probably talking about it a lot. Maybe hold weekly meetings, monthly meetings, just where you're sharing. You're letting the people within this organization share their successes amongst themselves. So you facilitate that. But I think that's where the excellence comes from, when there's not one person saying, here's how you do it. It's, you're kind of letting people rise on their own and sharing their successes.
And anytime anybody says social media center of excellence, there needs to be like a dun 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 that plays over the top of it, because that just needs to happen.
That's awesome. One more question just came in. We'll quick grab that, put it on air. It's Carmela. Hey, Carmela, thanks for joining us this Friday. What if your C-suite has an expectation that just can't be met? How do you open their eyes and be realistic? Like, come on, wake up, guys.
Examples of other communities. A lot of times you'll have, from a C-level expectation, it'll be like, okay, we've created this. Here's what we expect for engagement levels, or for page views if you're using an external one, things like that. And I would say that in a lot of cases, the first several months to the first year, it's going to be lower than they potentially expect. Unless it's a huge brand, and then it might be higher than they expect, which is potentially good, but it's also potentially bad if the higher page views and interaction is because there's problems, right? So I would say that comparison shopping, so to speak, with other communities that are in the same realm as yours is an awesome way to show stuff up, and that's whether or not you can get that from existing communities like the Community Roundtable, things like that have a lot of information. My CMGR has awesome conversations where people are actually looking for those pieces and points of comparison. That sort of conversation can be a good value add to show to a C-level, to be like, listen, the 99-1 rule might not be real anymore. It might not be as impactful as we used to think. But here's what other people that are incredibly smarter than I might be think about this. People that have they study this for a living. Here's their 2 cents on this exact question. Let's discuss further and see what kind of plan we can put together to make your expectations in our current state kind of hit in the middle.
Just to throw something out on there, I know that Hootsuite right now is doing what they're calling the Love List, and I think they've collected data for a while, and I think they're doing a webinar on it on Monday, but they're basically sharing that that data for several large brands just to kind of show like what they've actually been able to accomplish so that you can actually match up your brand to that to see kind of where you stand in comparison. I think that's going out on the hashtag HS for Hootsuite Love List, HS Love List.
And I think the other thing too, I mean, just more on the level of when you are talking to them and you're bringing this, remember that they hired you because of your expertise. That's the one thing that I always try to remember is like in order for me to have a position like this, I look at myself as an expert. I know how to look at this and be the one that translates it to you. So when I'm looking at these expectations, well, yeah, it would be great if you have this. It's more on the blunt side, but if you have to, just say, you know what, this is what you brought me in for, is to take this information and to do with it what you need to. This is as far as we can actually get with it. And so sometimes you do need to be a little bit more stern if you feel like you can pull that off, but I think that it is important to kind of you know, really pull out that expertise card every so often, especially to the C-suite.
Yeah, for sure. Like, definitely learn to speak their language too, like what's in it for them. And at the end of the day, if you can't figure out how to communicate with them or build a good community for them, find somewhere where you can build a good community. Like, sometimes it's just time to move on, even if it sucks.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow in some cases, but a lot of times the sort of the expectation of what a community will do. Sometimes people envision them to be like these magical mystery wonderlands filled with unicorns and lead generation, you know, and sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're more of a sustaining process, right? It's more of a, this is for our customers, or this is for our internal users, or this is for our actual employees, and it's a safe place for them to complain or to ask for favors or ask for questions, etc. And sometimes that doesn't translate into dollars very well. Sometimes you end up working with a bit of a loss leader to make sure your customers or your internal customers are more happy, which is not a bad thing, but the expectation might be that we're going to spend X dollars on this and make X times 5. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes we're just going to make the people that have already spent money with us or the people that work for us significantly happier, which is sometimes not easy to put a pin on.
And I think that plays really well, Patrick, into, you know, what I believe the topic is next week, which is retention, you know, community retention. And, you know, a lot of times people talk about, you know, acquisition, but retention itself, even if it is just a place like that, is such a valuable tool to be able to keep people, you know, because they're the ones, you know, turnover rate is great if you could keep your head above water, but that's an uphill battle that you can't survive in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Did we ask question 5, guys? I feel like we didn't. So kind of going along with how do you really address like a C-suite who won't accept like, what you're saying community expectations should be or could be, how do you address a community member who will not accept your response regarding product, service updates, or features?
Ban them. Kick them right out.
It's a new reason for banning. I haven't heard that reason for banning yet.
we only have room for people that agree with us, so I'm sorry, but you're going to have to show yourself out.
I think we talked about it a little bit last week when we were talking about moderation. Oftentimes there are members of the community that require a little bit more explanation than others, some hand-holding. And it doesn't mean that they're any less valuable a part of the community or that we like them any less. It just means that they're not on the same page yet. So it might be a good idea to take the conversation offline to shoot an email, or maybe have a Google Hangout with this person, or jump on the telephone, whatever it happens to be, to kind of discuss live what's going on and why the expectations aren't being met. And in the same way, often I find the people who are most demanding are the people that are less active. So I think it's the same for the C-suite. Any person in the C-suite or in the community that's really demanding something happen and that expectation can't be met might not clearly understand the community as a whole anyway. So you want to fold them into what's going on so they kind of get the feel. They know what the community is like, why it exists, and then once they understand the community, then they're more likely to understand why we are unable at this time to do what they expect us to do.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Hey guys, okay, so one more quick question from Tina. We're pretty much out of time, but have you ever failed to build the community you expected to build?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not because I failed might be the wrong word. It's not a matter of I failed to build the community I expected. It's more along the lines of like, I thought it was gonna go this way, and it ended up going completely in a different way, and I'm not sure why, but it's not a bad thing, right? So failure might be the wrong term for it, because sometimes that sort of like serendipitous left turn that it might make actually ends up being better than your plan anyway, right? And that you might have envisioned it as a support community or as a whatever, right? But it ends up being sort of like this social network type community. I think Spiceworks is a really good example of like they wanted to put a community together for IT professionals, and my God, if they don't talk about video games a hell of a lot on that thing. And it's just become this hangout for people that are in the same job description, the same sort of industry, just they interact with each other on Spiceworks significantly more than they do probably with each other on Facebook or Twitter, and it's completely out of left field.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely perfect. I mean, if you don't fail at building the community you expected, you're not listening to your community well enough. You know, they're the ones that are really the ones that are in the driver's seat. So that flexibility is so important, and those left turns, you should be glad that they happen because that means people are actually paying attention.
People are like, no, I don't want that community. That community idea is terrible. I want to go this way.
All right, well, thanks, guys. It's been a really good conversation. Join us next week. Some of us are in Canada and don't have Thanksgiving, and others just need a break from family. But we'll be talking about community retention, and it'll be a lot of fun. So have a good week.